Pain is not the end of your story. ITIS, the place where your power is revealed. Every person who hurt you did not come to destroy you. They came to expose what still needs to grow. Today, is not about revenge, explanations, or closure from others. Today, it's about taking back control of your mind, your emotions, and your future. Emotional control is power because the moment you react without thinking, you hand the steering wheel of your life to someone else. Painful words, betrayal, disrespect, or rejection only gain authority when they dictate your next move. Strength is not silence, and power is not aggression. Power is the ability to pause, breathe, and choose your response with clarity. When you control your emotions, you control your direction. Instead of being dragged into chaos, you rise above it. The world does not reward loud reactions. It rewards disciplined minds that move with purpose, patience, and precision under pressure. Most people believe emotions control them, but emotions are signals, not commands. Anger, sadness, and frustration are messengers asking for awareness, not action. When you respond instantly, you confuse feeling with fact. Emotional control means separating what you feel from what you do. It is learning to observe emotions without obeying them. This is how leaders are formed and winners are separated from victims. You do not deny emotion, you manage it. Management creates mastery, and mastery creates results. When emotions stop controlling decisions, decisions begin controlling outcomes. Reacting feels powerful in the moment, but it weakens you over time. Every emotional outburst teaches your mind that you are unsafe with yourself. Self-trust is built when you prove you can stay calm under fire. The calm mind sees options the emotional mind cannot see. While others explode, complain, or withdraw, you remain steady and strategic. Emotional control allows you to think long-term instead of momentary relief. Short-term reactions create long-term consequences. Long-term thinking creates lasting success. The ability to remain composed is not suppression, it is sophistication. When someone hurts you, their greatest weapon is your reaction. They may provoke disrespect or disappoint you, but the damage only multiplies if you react impulsively. Emotional control disarms people without confrontation. Silence can be louder than argument, and restraint can be more intimidating than anger. When you refuse to react, you send a clear message that your peace is not available for manipulation. This level of control frustrates those who thrive on drama. They lose influence because they cannot access your emotions. And without access, they have no power. Emotional control is not weakness. It is delayed strength. It is choosing the right moment instead of the loud moment. It is responding when clarity replaces chaos. The disciplined mind understands that not every battle deserves engagement. Energy is currency, and emotional reactions are expensive. Wise people invest their energy, not waste it. When you stop reacting to everything, you start focusing on what truly matters. Focus compounds results. The calm individual advances quietly, while others remain trapped in cycles of reaction, exhaustion, and regret caused by unmanaged emotions. Every time you control your emotions, you build inner authority. Authority is not demanded, it is felt. People sense when you are unshaken. This presence commands respect without words. Emotional control builds confidence because you know you cannot be easily disturbed. You stop fearing triggers because you trust your response. This self-trust becomes a foundation for leadership, growth, and stability. When life applies pressure, you do not collapse or explode. You adjust, adapt, and advance. Control creates consistency, and consistency builds credibility in every area of life. Lack of emotional control keeps people stuck in patterns they swear they want to escape. The same arguments, the same regrets, the same apologies repeat because reactions never change. Change begins when reactions change. When you master emotional control, you interrupt destructive cycles. You stop feeding negativity with attention. You stop giving free rent to pain inside your mind. Healing accelerates when emotions are processed instead of projected. Projection blames others. Processing builds self-awareness. Awareness is the gateway to freedom, growth, and personal elevation beyond past wounds. Emotional control does not mean you are unaffected. It means you are unbreakable. You still feel deeply, but you act wisely. You allow emotions to pass without letting them park permanently. This skill transforms pain into strength and pressure into polish. Life will test you again and again, but each test becomes easier when you remain centered. Control is practiced daily, not achieved once. Each moment of restraint strengthens the next. Over time, calm becomes natural, reactions fade, and power becomes your default state under all circumstances. Waiting for understanding from people who hurt you is one of the most silent forms of self-betrayal. You assume that if they finally see your pain, everything will make sense and peace will arrive. But some people are not confused, they are comfortable. They benefit from the story where they are never wrong. Expecting clarity from them keeps you emotionally tied to their limitations. Freedom does not begin when they understand you. Freedom begins when you stop needing them to. The need for validation hands power to people who have already proven they cannot handle responsibility. Some people avoid understanding because understanding would demand change. It would require accountability, humility, and effort they are unwilling to give. When you wait for them to acknowledge your pain, you are asking them to become someone they have no intention of becoming. That waiting drains your energy and delays your healing. You keep replaying conversations that will never happen and apologies that will never come. This emotional waiting room becomes a prison. The moment you realize that some people choose blindness over truth, you reclaim your time and mental space. Closure is often misunderstood as something external, but true closure is internal. It is not a conversation, it is a decision. It is choosing to stop reopening a wound just to prove it existed. People who hurt you may never validate your experience, but that does not make your experience invalid. Your pain does not need their permission to be real. Closure happens when you stop arguing with reality and start accepting what is. Acceptance is not agreement. It is release. Release allows healing to begin without resistance. Many people remain emotionally stuck because they confuse explanation with healing. They believe if they explain themselves one more time, they will finally be understood. But explanation to the unwilling becomes self-abandonment. You end up shrinking your truth to make it digestible for people committed to misunderstanding you. The need to be understood becomes heavier than the need to be free. When you let go of explaining yourself to people who refuse to listen, you create space for peace, clarity, and forward movement. Understanding is mutual, not forced. When only one person is trying, the relationship becomes a negotiation with silence. People who benefit from misunderstanding you often use confusion as protection. As long as they pretend not to understand, they never have to change. Recognizing this pattern helps you stop personalizing their behavior. Their lack of understanding is not a reflection of your worth or clarity, it is a reflection of their resistance. This realization breaks the emotional attachment that keeps you seeking answers in empty places. Letting go of expectation does not mean you become bitter or closed. It means you become realistic. You stop assigning emotional responsibility to people who have shown they cannot carry it. This realism protects your heart and sharpens your discernment. You learn where to invest vulnerability and where to maintain distance. Emotional maturity is knowing that not everyone deserves access to your inner world. When you expecting depth from shallow places, disappointment loses its grip on your spirit. The most exhausting battles are the ones fought inside your head. Imagine conversations, rewritten scenarios, and hope for apologies steal energy you could use to build your future. When you stop waiting for understanding, your mind quiets. You no longer rehearse explanations or prepare defenses. Silence replaces noise. Peace replaces tension. Your focus returns to what you can control. Control restores confidence. Confidence restores momentum. Momentum shifts your life forward while others remain stuck, reliving the same emotional loop. Releasing the need for understanding is an act of self-respect. It is saying your healing matters more than their awareness. It is choosing progress over proof. You do not need agreement to move on. You do not need validation to grow. When expectation leaves, clarity enters. When clarity enters, strength follows. You stop knocking on doors that will never open and start building doors of your own. This shift transforms pain into independence and emotional reliance into personal authority. Pain always arrives with a hidden message, but most people are too busy reacting to read it. When someone hurts you, the experience is not random, it is revealing. It exposes blind spots, weak boundaries, misplaced trust, or ignored intuition. Extracting the lesson means asking honest questions instead of assigning endless blame. What did this situation teach you about yourself? Not just about them. Pain becomes useful when it sharpens awareness. When you treat every wound as information, you turn emotional setbacks into tools for growth and self-mastery. Bitterness, else justified, but it is expensive. It drains energy, clouds judgment, and keeps old wounds alive long after the event has passed. Carrying bitterness does not protect you, it poisons you slowly. Extracting the lesson allows you to release the emotional weight without losing the wisdom. You keep the insight and drop the resentment. This is how healing becomes intelligent, not emotional. Growth does not require anger to remember the lesson. Clarity is enough. When bitterness leaves, peace has room to enter and expand. Every painful experience asks you to evolve, not to harden. People who refuse to learn repeat the same cycles with different faces. The lesson keeps showing up until it is understood. Extracting the lesson breaks the cycle. You stop asking why this happened to me and start asking what this prepared me for. That shift changes everything. Pain then becomes a teacher instead of a tormentor. The lesson upgrades your decision-making, your boundaries, and your standards. Growth begins the moment understanding replaces resentment. Holding on to bitterness feels like strength, but it is actually fear wearing armor. Fear of being hurt again, fear of trusting wrong, fear of looking foolish. Lessons remove fear because they create clarity. Once you understand what went wrong, you no longer need bitterness to feel safe. Awareness becomes your protection. You move forward wiser, not colder. This is emotional maturity. You stop guarding wounds and start guarding standards. The lesson stays with you, but the pain no longer controls your emotional climate. Extracting the lesson requires humility. It requires admitting that you may have ignored signs, compromised values, or accepted less than you deserved. This is not self-blame. It is self-ownership. Ownership is empowering because it gives you control. When you own the lesson, you reclaim your power to choose differently next time. Bitterness keeps you focused on what they did. Lessons keep you focused on what you will do. One keeps you stuck. The other moves you forward with intention. Some people confuse forgiveness with forgetting. Extracting the lesson does not mean erasing memory. It means reframing it. You remember the experience without reliving the emotion. You recall the facts without reopening the wound. This emotional separation is strength. You stop bleeding every time you remember what happened. Memory becomes neutral. The lesson remains active, guiding future choices. This is how people heal deeply without becoming numb. You keep your heart open, but your eyes become sharper. When bitterness stays, it becomes identity. People start defining themselves by what hurt them. The story never changes, only the audience. Extracting the lesson allows you to outgrow the story. You stop introducing yourself through pain and start defining yourself through progress. Growth demands that pain become a chapter, not the entire book. Lessons close chapters. Bitterness keeps rereading the same page. When you learn, you move on. Movement is proof of healing and emotional intelligence. Lessons turn pain into leverage. What once weakened you now strengthens your discernment. What once confused you now informs your boundaries. What once broke you now refines you. This transformation only happens when bitterness is released. Carrying resentment blocks elevation. Releasing it clears the path forward. You do not become naive, you become precise. You do not become cold, you become clear. Pain fulfilled its purpose once the lesson was learned, and from that point forward, wisdom replaces wounds. When people hurt you, the easiest reaction is to harden your heart, but that reaction costs you more than it protects you. Lowering your heart means shrinking your capacity to love, trust, and believe. Upgrading your standards means you keep your humanity while improving your boundaries. You do not punish the world because one person failed you. You refine your requirements for access. Standards are not anger, they are clarity. They are the quiet rules that decide what behavior you allow near your life, your time, and your emotional space. Bitterness feels like armor, but it actually keeps wounds exposed. When you become bitter, everything touches a nerve. Conversations feel heavier. Relationships feel exhausting. And joy feels distant. Upgrading standards does the opposite. It removes unnecessary friction by filtering who and what gets close. You stop over-explaining, over-giving, and overextending. You no longer negotiate your worth. This shift does not make you unkind. It makes you intentional. Intentional people do not waste energy convincing others of their value. They simply require better behavior. Lowering your heart often happens quietly. You stop expecting honesty. You stop believing people can change. You stop opening up. This slow emotional shutdown feels safe, but it limits growth. Upgrading standards keeps your heart alive while protecting it with wisdom. You do not close yourself. You become selective. Selectivity is not fear, it is self-respect. You allow depth with those who demonstrate consistency. You allow distance with those who demonstrate chaos. This balance preserves both your peace and your emotional capacity. People confuse boundaries with walls. Walls isolate, boundaries guide. When standards are clear, people know how to treat you. When standards are weak, people test limits. Upgrading standards is communicating without constant conversation. Your actions speak before your words do. You stop tolerating behavior you once excused. This does not require confrontation every time. Often it requires quiet withdrawal of access. Distance becomes the message. Consistency becomes the teacher. This level of maturity removes drama because expectations are no longer negotiable. Bitterness keeps you focused on the past. Standards focus you on the future. One traps you in memory. The other prepares you for better experiences. When you raise standards, you stop asking why people hurt you and start asking who deserves proximity. That question changes everything. You stop reacting emotionally and start choosing strategically. Choices determine outcomes. Outcomes determine direction. Direction determines destiny. Standards shape choices long before emotions enter the picture. This is how wise people protect their future without damaging their present. Lowering your heart often leads to self-betrayal. You silence your needs to avoid conflict. You accept less to keep peace. You tolerate disrespect to feel connected. Upgrading standards ends this cycle. You become honest with yourself first. You acknowledge what you need, what you value, and what you will no longer accept. This honesty builds inner alignment. When your actions match your U.S. confidence grows naturally. You no longer seek approval because you approve of your own decisions and boundaries. Raising standards will disappoint people who benefited from your lack of them. Expect resistance, expect confusion, expect pushback. This does not mean you are wrong. It means the dynamic has changed. People who thrived on access without responsibility will feel uncomfortable. Let them. Growth often requires discomfort, especially for those unwilling to grow with you. You do not owe anyone the old version of yourself. Evolution is not betrayal. It is evidence that you learn from experience. Upgrading standards changes the quality of your life quietly but permanently. Conversations become healthier. Relationships become lighter. Choices become clearer. You stop attracting chaos because chaos no longer passes the filter. Your heart stays open, but your gates are guarded. This combination creates peace without loneliness and strength without hardness. You become someone who loves deeply but tolerates wisely. This balance transforms pain into precision and experience into discernment that guides every interaction moving forward. Outgrowing the version of yourself that others had access to is one of the most uncomfortable but necessary forms of healing. People often relate to who you were when you lack clarity, confidence, or boundaries. When you change, it disrupts the role they assigned you. Growth challenges familiarity, and familiarity is comfortable even when it is unhealthy. You do not need permission to evolve. You are allowed to become stronger than the circumstances that once defined you. Outgrowing old versions is not abandonment, it is alignment. T with who you are becoming. Some people resist your growth because it reminds them of their own stagnation. Your progress becomes a mirror they did not ask to look into. This discomfort can turn into criticism, distance, or subtle sabotage. Recognizing this dynamic helps you stop internalizing their reactions. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. Growth does not require applause, it requires courage. When you continue evolving without shrinking to keep others comfortable, you reclaim ownership of your direction and protect your momentum. Outgrowing a version of yourself often means releasing roles you once played to survive. The people pleaser, the silent tolerator, the overgiver, the fixer. These roles once kept peace, but cost you self-respect. As you grow, those roles no longer fit. People who benefited from them may resist your change. Let them. Growth is not about maintaining access. It is about increasing alignment. Alignment creates peace because you no longer live in contradiction to your values or needs. Distance is sometimes the byproduct of growth, not the failure of connection. When you evolve, conversations change, interests shift, priorities rise. Some relationships naturally fade because they were built on a version of you that no longer exists. This does not make the past invalid. It means the season has ended. Holding on out of guilt delays progress. Letting go with clarity honors both who you were and who you are becoming. Growth requires space to expand into its next form. Outgrowing yourself also means letting go of the need to be understood by people who only knew your past. They may reference old mistakes, old limits, or old patterns. That is where their knowledge of you stopped. You do not need to correct their perception. Your life will do that. Consistent growth speaks louder than explanation. You are not obligated to shrink back into an outdated identity to make others comfortable. Comfort is not the goal, integrity is. When you outgrow an old version, you stop negotiating your worth. You no longer accept treatment that once felt normal. This shift can feel lonely at first because familiarity disappears before alignment arrives. This is the space where self-trust is built. You learn to stand with yourself without external validation. This independence is not isolation, it is strength. From this place, you attract relationships that meet you where you are, not where you were. Some people will accuse you of changing as if it is an insult. Growth always looks like betrayal to those who depended on your limitations. Do not defend your evolution. Defense keeps you tied to the past. Move forward quietly. Let consistency rewrite narratives. The people meant to grow with you will adjust. The people meant to fall away will reveal themselves. Both outcomes are necessary. Growth simplifies life by clarifying who belongs in your next chapter. Outgrowing yourself is not a one-time event. It is a continuous process. Each level requires a new identity, new habits, and new boundaries. As you rise, fewer people have access, but the access becomes healthier. Quality replaces quantity. Peace replaces approval. Direction replaces confusion. This evolution is the reward for choosing growth over comfort and truth over familiarity, allowing you to step fully into a life that reflects your highest standards and deepest values. B, being hurt does not remove your qualification for greatness, it sharpens it. Pain exposes strength you did not know you needed. Every challenge carries pressure, and pressure reveals structure. People who were never tested rarely discover what they are capable of. Hurt does not mean you are broken. It means you were engaged. Life does not refine what it does not plan to use. The experience that wounded you also trained you. It forced awareness, resilience, and depth. Preparation often feels like punishment when you do not yet see what you are being prepared for. Many people believe pain disqualifies them because it slowed them down or changed them. In reality, it redirected them. Hurt interrupts comfort and forces reassessment. It breaks routines that kept you small. It questions assumptions you never examined. The discomfort you felt was not failure, it was adjustment. Growth rarely announces itself gently. Being hurt pushes you to develop emotional intelligence, discernment, and strength. These qualities cannot be learned through ease. They are earned through experience that demands more from you than you thought you had. Pain strips away illusions. It reveals who is solid, what is stable, and where you relied on weakness disguised as trust. This clarity is preparation. You stop building your life on fantasy and start building it on truth. Truth may hurt initially, but it supports weight. Illusions collapse under pressure. Being hurt teaches you how to build foundations that last. This lesson alone moves you ahead of people who remain untested. Preparation looks like loss before it looks like leverage. When you are hurt, you are forced to develop internal resources. You learn to self-regulate, self-reflect, and self-correct. These skills are rare because most people outsource their stability. Pain teaches independence of mind and strength of spirit. You become less reactive and more intentional. You stop needing constant reassurance. This inner stability prepares you for higher levels of responsibility. Responsibility requires emotional maturity. Emotional maturity is born in moments where you had to hold yourself together when support was absent. Being hurt also clarifies purpose. Pain refines direction by showing you what no longer aligns. It removes distractions by making tolerance uncomfortable. You begin to value peace, truth, and growth differently. What once felt acceptable now feels heavy. This shift is preparation for environments that demand higher standards. You cannot carry unresolved pain into higher levels without it resurfacing. Healing becomes necessary not for comfort, but for capacity. Capacity expands only when pain has been processed and integrated. Many people confuse preparation with ease. They assume readiness feels calm and confident. Often readiness feels uncertain and stretched. Hurt stretches you. It forces adaptation. Adaptation creates capability. Capability creates confidence. Confidence built without experience is fragile. Confidence built through pain is stable. You trust yourself because you survived difficulty. This self-trust prepares you for challenges ahead. You no longer fear disruption because you know you can adjust. Adaptability becomes your advantage in unpredictable environments. Pain also teaches empathy without weakness. You understand suffering without romanticizing it. This awareness deepens leadership and connection. You listen better, you judge less. You guide with understanding instead of assumption. This depth prepares you to influence without control. Influence requires credibility. Credibility is built when people sense you have been tested. Untested advice feels hollow. Tested wisdom carries weight. Hurt transforms perspective, and perspective transforms impact. Impact is preparation expressed through action, insight, and presence. Preparation does not erase memory, it reframes it. You stop asking why it happened and start recognizing what it built. Strength replaces resentment. Awareness replaces confusion. Direction replaces doubt. Being hurt did not stop you, it shaped you. The same experience that challenged you also equipped you. You are not behind because of pain. You are positioned because of it. What you endured was not the end of your story. It was the training ground for what you are now capable of handling